Such urgent news, and we could not miss it. Joe Biden withdrew his candidacy from the election race. How do you assess this decision of the current American president?
It was expected. Everything was going to this. There is a split within the Democratic Party, and a clan split. If the Obama clan is for Harris, then the Clinton clan has emerged, which is generally nominating today. Literally until yesterday they insisted that Biden stay, and he took Hillary Clinton as a partner. They are generally against Harris. But now that Biden himself has finally announced that he is leaving, the question now is who Harris will take as his partner. But I, as a Republican, am worried about something else. Any couple associated with Harris today not only has an advantage over the Trump-Vance pair, but even wins in swing states. This is exactly what Trump was counting on. Therefore, my fears and my reluctance to choose Vance as a partner, my fears are justified. The trouble is that there is very little chance that Trump, paired with Vance, can defeat fifth. At least because in order to win, the Democrats need the votes of independents. This is the most important thing, and we Republicans don't need to be told by Trump that we should support him. We have already made our choice. The problem is how Trump can attract the attention of independents to his side. This does not happen. No matter what Trump says, I have a wonderful, young, smart, capable partner, but we don't care. We care about voices. So, these votes, unfortunately, were not taken into account when Trump chose his vice president, I mean the votes of the independents. This is what worries us today. You see, no matter Harris-Schmaris, there will be someone else. Without Biden, they even win over the couple of Trump and others. And Vance, for example, is a different matter. This is what worries us most today.
Speaking still, returning to Joe Biden, what do you think? This is the reason why he withdrew from the election race. How important is it? Because Vance said that if the cause is illness, then the Republicans will demand that Joe Biden also leave his presidency at the current stage.
First of all, this disease, the reference to the disease, to his memory loss, and so on, is a screen. In fact, the voter has high inflation in his head, high crime, illegal immigration. That is, what we face as ordinary Americans every day. This is very important. Therefore, Trump, despite the fact that he came out of this successful assassination attempt for all of us, thank God, he is alive and well, but today, going public, he needs to say how he will solve world problems. This is very important. Well, there's good news. I would recommend that you read the Left Liberal Atlantic magazine, which provided interesting information about the fact that just yesterday the same Vance suddenly said that America would not tolerate the occupation of Ukraine. Do you understand me? Look at how Vance is changing. It was expected, frankly speaking. Moreover, Trump will not choose who will arbitrarily. Trump chose someone who would be loyal, that is, loyal to him and would do what Trump wants. In this regard, I want to positively note Biden's telephone conversation with Ukrainian President Zelensky. Both are satisfied with this conversation. Today we are waiting for Trump's visit to Ukraine. This can happen very soon. I hope Trump will be accompanied by our friends in Congress, friends of Ukraine. The same Mike McCall, chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee, Mike Rogers, the Arms Committee, and Mike Turner, the Intelligence Committee. This will show us these plans of Trump, how he will solve the war in Ukraine. And in favor of Ukraine, I have no doubt about it.
Let's go back. Now Biden is withdrawing his candidacy from the election race. What is the next algorithm of actions? That is, for the Democrats now, they have to submit a new candidate as soon as possible? And who do you think it could be?
Look, first of all, the fate of a party candidate is decided at Congresses. For example, the Republican convention was held, both the main presidential candidate and the vice president were nominated. This is the law. Voting is also going on there. Look, now everyone is waiting for August 19th. This means that from the 19th to the 22nd, there will be a Congress of Democrats. And by this date, they must have time to outline their candidates. Is there Harris? And this will most likely be Harris. Why? Because it is technically impossible today to immediately remove the name of both the first and the second, and put new people. Why? Why? Firstly, after all, the primary elections were held within the party, and Biden and Harris won an absolute majority thanks to their names. And today it is impossible to put new names for whom the people have not yet voted. That is, in other words, some Democrats say, let's maybe have time to hold mini primary, intra-primary elections before August 19th. Technically, it is very difficult, very difficult. Why? Because the split is evident within the Democratic Party, and many are wondering. What suited us in Biden should suit not only in Harris, but also in the person who will be vice president. That is, discussions should take place in society. And there is very little time for this, so urgently today they want to leave Harris as the first person, and choose from 2 or 3 on the lists as the second. This is the governor of California, the second is the governor of Pennsylvania, I think, and Michigan. These 3 people, there are candidates, Whitner from Michigan, and Shapiro from Pennsylvania, and Newsom from California. These are 3 people, and someone will be chosen from among them. And again, according to the polls, Harris Shapiro is the best. According to polls, they now prevail over Trump-Vance, although they are trying to cite polls only in swing states. California, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Virginia, Wisconsin. And in them, Harris Shapiro prevail over Trump-Vance. Now that's interesting. This may affect paperwork and some technical work to legalize this pair before they are put to a vote at the Congress on August 19th. Let's see where this leads. But again, my dear, I am more concerned about Trump. Why? Trump must decide the fate of the war in Ukraine in favor of Ukraine. Moreover, look, positive things come from him. The positive is that he will not allow Ukraine to be occupied. And moreover, we are in favor of never applying politics to Ukraine, peace in exchange for territories. This should not happen. Not a single inch of the land of Ukraine should be given to a barbarian. Never. This is our policy of the internal Republicans. I mean the Reagan wing. I'll give you good news. 70% of Americans, just the day before yesterday announced, 70%, I emphasize, Americans, regardless of party affiliation, for full support for Ukraine until its complete victory. You are well aware that there is still bipartisan unity in Congress, which is also in favor of full support for Ukraine, so I beg you not to be upset. Turbulent processes in America. This has never happened in our history. There was none. But it is interesting, very interesting what is happening. America is changing on the go. There is an evolution in our heads. Where, who, how, what is it worth, how do we help Israel defeat these barbarians, terrorists, and how to help Ukraine get rid of this evil? This is what is in our heads. Foreign policy has never been on the voters' agenda as it is today. It has never been like this. Today, life forces our voters to think not only about the prices of essential goods, but about Ukraine and Israel at the same time. That's what makes me happy. We must make common decisions that concern not only Ukraine and the people of Israel, for example, but also us. This applies to us, because both Israel and Ukraine protect our national interests, and these two countries are on the same line of war against evil, which is led today by Putin.
Tell me, please, now Joe Biden has supported the candidacy of Kamala Harris. We understand that this is not yet an official candidate from the Democrats, but nevertheless, most likely, this is a contender for the election race and, in fact, for the presidency of the United States. How do you assess the role of Kamala Harris during the 5 years in which she was with Biden? Her role, her work as Vice President of the United States?
She, to be honest, failed both projects that were attributed to her by Biden himself. The first project was the border issue with Mexico. We have such a word, czar. That is, you know, the head of the project of this or that. We always call it tsar, so we call it if it is a direct translation. So, you know, she appeared on the border with Mexico with a great delay to see with her own eyes what is happening there, so she did not make a single smart decision, did not submit any proposal for consideration by the same Biden. Absolutely. I will add to you, to this day, from 5,000 to 6,000 illegal immigrants cross the border with Mexico. Crime has risen, and crime is already high under Biden. It grew due to the flow of illegal immigration. Why? Because the criminals were released in Venezuela, and in El Salvador, and in other cities of Latin America. Moreover, there are a lot of illegal immigrants with an incomprehensible past from North Africa. And what can I say? 20,000 Russians crossed our border last year alone. And where is the guarantee that there are no KGB officers among these 20,000, despite the fierce hatred that Putin harbors for America? Where is the guarantee that he did not send them? Therefore, it is no coincidence. I would like to draw your attention to the fact that the director of the FBI openly said at a congressional hearing that the occurrence of another tragic incident since September 11th is quite possible in our country. These are the words of the director of FBI. You get the idea, don't you? Therefore, as for Harris, she did not show herself in anything positive at all. Round zero, if not to say minus. And therefore, her stay in the president's chair will not lead to anything good. Moreover, she did not just adhere to, you know, this policy of Biden. Do not provoke, do not escalate. We don't want to go to war with Russia. We don't want to go to war with Iran. Please be careful. We will not give you this so as not to shoot far into the territory of Russia. And Israel, she says, be careful, in no case encroach on the territory of Iran or the Houthis. For example, Netanyahu disobeyed yesterday and did what he should have done a long time ago. Now, you see, she has the same position. Moreover, she is seen in her sympathies for the left-wing radical group, progressives, who are in favor of ending the war today both in Ukraine and in Israel, precisely by ceding territories, in order to come to November 5th as a party of peace.
И в Израиле именно путем уступок территорий с тем, чтобы прийти к 5 ноября как партия мира.
This is her position too. Therefore, this does not bode well. Our only hope is in Trump, in the Republican Party, which must decide what the name of America's great country deserves.
Решиться на то, что заслуживает имя великой страны Америки.
It is no accident that in his speech at the Congress he said very well that we will achieve peace through the prism of force, peace through a demonstration of force. This is how it was under Reagan, and today Trump wants to demonstrate it. We are counting on it.
If we talk about Kamala Harris, if she is still elected as a candidate for the presidency of the United States, how do you think her program, some of her messages will differ from what Donald Trump offered to his voters?
Как вы считаете, насколько ее программа, ее какие-то месседжи будут отличаться от того, что предлагал Дональд Трамп своим избирателям?
Significantly, this will be a continuation of Biden's position.
I mean Joe Biden and Donald Trump.
It will be a continuation of Biden's position. Understand? There will be nothing of the kind, absolutely. There will be no contrast, of course. This is her teacher, this is her policy, this is her party, this is the strategy of her party, so there will be nothing radical. On the contrary, I think it will even get worse. Frankly speaking, it would be more beneficial for us, the Republicans, for Biden to stay. It would be easier to defeat him. Harris is harder to beat. Why? Firstly, she is younger than both Biden and Trump, that's one. Secondly, she does not have such a skeleton in her closet, as they say, in her luggage, almost none, as, for example, sewn out of a finger sucked from Trump, for example, and nevertheless. Trump's age also plays a role. What are you talking about? He is in the same weight category as Biden. This also affects the minds of voters, especially the average person. And nevertheless, it is not necessary to expect that if Harris is president, everything will radically improve and the war will quickly end in favor of Ukraine. This will never happen.
Well, as a matter of fact, if we are already talking about what kind of support Kamala Harris has, then there were preliminary opinion polls, and if the Democrats supported Kamala Harris quite seriously, that is, more than 50% of the Democrats supported this candidacy, then, say, among ordinary Americans, a poll was conducted. Half of Americans said they still do not see Kamala Harris as President of the United States. Do you think the reason here is still in politics or in some gender? Or what could be the reason?
Good question, good question. No, I don't think skin color or gender plays a role here. I don't think about it. America has long passed the stage when we were dominated by the attachment of belonging to the semi-determined, for example, to the color of the skin. I will give you an example. Have you heard somewhere in which of the civilized countries a representative of national minorities would be elected president?
В какой из цивилизованных стран президентом был бы выбран представитель национальных меньшинств?
This happened in America. Nowhere, not in Germany, not in France, not in Great Britain, not in Italy, not in any other Western country, has this been and is not the case. But we had it. Moreover, they chose Obama, an African American, and not even for one term, he served 2 terms. Moreover, for the first time, a representative of a colored ethnic group became a female vice president. Her father is African American, her mother is from India. So I don't think that choosing or voting for Harris will be dominated by her gender or even skin color.
Доминировать в голове мнение об ее гендерной принадлежности или даже цвета кожи.
No, I think the average person is most affected by the fact that she, together with Biden, is guilty of what is happening today in our country. These are, again, everyday problems: high prices for essential goods, the result of inflation, high gasoline prices, high illegal immigration, and much, much more, domestic, which is specific to our society. This can have a great effect. But, again, I have to repeat it to you once again. There are 42 million Democrats, 36 million Republicans, 34 million registered independents in our country. Therefore, today the fate of the president in the elections on November 5th will be decided by who will be supported by the independents. And for this, if, for example, the same Trump took Nikki Haley, a great friend of Ukraine, as a partner, for example, she would automatically bring both independents and women to the side of the Republicans. This is very important. Why? Because, as Nikki Haley said, she says, "I am a woman, my daughter is growing up, I am in favor of there being restrictions on a woman's right to choose an abortion, but against the background of these restrictions, there should be a space in which a woman can decide for herself what to do when terminating a pregnancy."
Должно быть обеспечено пространство, в котором женщина может принимать сама решение, как ей быть при прерывании беременности.
Yes or no, and when. In this way, she could attract a huge army of women, which, unfortunately, is not the case to this day in relation to Trump and Vance, for example. Therefore, this is our most sore spot. In this regard, Harris will have a woman's advantage on her side.
Well, there are already comments from Donald Trump. He commented, in fact, on Biden's withdrawal from the election race and also on the candidacy of Kamala Harris. What did he say in a phone call for CNN? He gave his comments. He called Biden the worst single president in history, but also said that the difference between Trump's position and yours is that Kamala Harris will be easier to defeat than Biden himself. How would you comment on what Donald Trump said?
I do not agree with him, absolutely. Again, I say, she has an advantage in age, and the second advantage is her past. The average person was told today that Trump has 34 charges. The court has not yet made a decision. I think it will be sometime in September. I think, somewhere in early September, a decision will be made on this matter. That is, whether we like it or not, despite the fact that it is all invented, sucked out of thin air, it hangs in the head of the average person. Do you understand how? Therefore, the average person will be, basically, my friends, we are talking about independence. We, Republicans, have already decided. No one will ever change our opinion. We are for Trump, we know what values he defends. The hesitant are another matter, these are independents. Therefore, in this regard, I repeat, literally yesterday's published polls, Harris and any representative of the Democrats are either on a par, or prevails, albeit slightly, over Trump-Vance. This is the whole problem.
Хоть и незначительно, над Трампом-Венсом. В этом вся проблема.
I don't agree with Trump. He can't win much more easily against Harris than he can against Biden. Biden is already known to everyone. Everyone is dissatisfied with Biden. The majority and even the Democrats do not agree with him. Therefore, Trump and Vance have a much greater advantage than over Harris and another Democrat. Therefore, there will be more. This is Trump's mistake. You know, it's very disappointing. If Trump does not announce today more openly what he will do for young people, what reforms he will do in school education, knocking out of the heads of students, for example, socialist ideas, permissiveness and, conversely, talking about those values that have begun to be forgotten in America.
Вседозволенности, и наоборот говоря о тех ценностях, о которых стали забывать в Америке.
If he doesn't talk about how he will solve the problem of immigrants who came to this country 10, 20, 30 years ago, and there are about 20 million of them in us, I'm not talking about those 15 million who crossed the borders during Biden's stay in the White House, I'm talking about those who came earlier.
Которые пересекли границы в бытность пребывания Байдена в Белом доме. Я говорю о тех, кто раньше приехал.
I repeat, there are about 20 million of them. It's time to announce that we will start legalizing them if there is no criminal record in their past, for example. This is what he should announce. Then Hispanics, who make up a significant number in this group of illegal immigrants, will be more involved in voting for Trump. This is one of the options. Here is the second one. I have already mentioned the first one, school education reforms, the second, immigration. The third, for example, should say much more clearly that America was, is, and will be a friend of those countries that are fighting for their independence. And there is no relaxation in the protection of their rights for independence and democracy. This will just affect both Ukraine and Israel. This will also add pluses. Another thing is that he should say more clearly about his attitude to Europe, to our friends in Europe, saying that we will never leave Europe alone with the aggressors, but we are for a complete reform of both NATO and the European Union. So that no such buffoons as Orban and Schmorban have the right to put spokes in the wheels of either the European Union or NATO. By changing the charter of these organizations, which should clearly state that decisions are made by majority vote, and not by universal suffrage. Do you understand how decision-making? This is what Trump seems to have in his head. It was before, but he has not yet voiced it today. This would help him gain more votes. In general, this is the kind of work we have ahead of us.
You say that the court still has to make decisions on the Trump case. Do you think Trump can withdraw from the election race if the decision is suddenly radically negative?
No, I'll tell you why. These accusations, even if they are made, will be appealed. In other words, from one of the judicial instances, it will go to a higher one, and so on. We have a multi-stage judicial system, so he can postpone it for months and years. This is also there, but the fact that he is accused affects the Philistine in his ears. All the Democrats say, how can you vote for a man who has 34 charges? He's a liar, a wife-hater. Oh, such stupid and nasty things, even if you stand or fall. And yet, it affects the average person in their heads. They think, come on, I'm tired of this name, give me some fresh, different, younger, and so on and so forth. Unfortunately, this works for the average person. Therefore, we have a lot of work to do to prove. And Trump is not who he is pretended to be. He is a normal patriot of America, and he never betrays his friends. And they will appreciate the great Ukrainian people, who are also defending us in Europe today, us, Americans. If it were not for Ukraine, this barbarian would already be in Poland, and in the Baltic states and further with all the stops. This is waiting for us. We must be aware of this and appreciate what is happening today to the great Ukrainian people, what they are doing in defense of our interests. And Trump understands this. He understands this, and here he is, and Johnson was at a meeting with him, left him satisfied, and many others who had a negative opinion of him today already respond differently. Therefore, I believe, we all believe that Trump is the very person who will decide the fate of Ukraine in favor of Ukraine. But we don't have time to wait until then. Just not. Remember, Trump's rights will only take effect on the day of the inauguration. It will be January 20th, 2025. And every day is dear to us. Every day is precious. Every day bombs fall on Kiev, on Kharkiv, on Odessa, on other cities. And so Putin is in a hurry. He is in a hurry to win back. The more the better. To then conduct trading. This is what he has, but we must not allow it. Therefore, today the Democrats are still in the White House, so we are putting pressure on them. We have a law passed on April 20th, according to which America is obliged to help Ukraine until its complete victory. Urgently provide F-16 and ATACMS aircraft with a radius of 200 to 300 kilometers or more. Pet riots. They are all available in Europe. You don't even need to send them from America. That's the whole problem.
The New York Times is now writing that Trump has already begun to prepare a campaign against Harris. In your opinion, how ready, in principle, were you for the fact that Biden would withdraw his candidacy, for such a development of events, for the fact that now it is no longer worth fighting against Biden? Because we heard Trump's latest statements, just a few weeks, especially after the attempt on his life, that it is now necessary to unite with Biden and there is no need to conduct any campaign against him, but now it is necessary to unite America in principle.
С Байденом сейчас нужно объединиться, и не нужно никакую кампанию против него вести, а нужно сейчас объединить Америку в принципе.
Do you think a campaign has already been prepared against Kamala Harris, and what could it be?
You know, about a couple of weeks ago, Nikki Haley addressed all Republicans, saying that big changes can take place in the ranks of the Democrats, and we need to be ready for a new Democratic candidate who will have an advantage over Trump. It is just the advantage that I have already mentioned above. In other words, she stressed that it would be much more difficult to fight the new candidate than with the same Biden. And she is right 1,000 times. These polls that I gave you above, they just say that this new couple of Harris and any other, for example, the same Shapiro, the governor of Pennsylvania, they already prevail over Trump in these swing states. This suggests that there is a lot of work to be done. Trump's only weapon is to convince the average person to vote for Trump and his running mate, which means to talk in more detail about how he is going to change both domestic and foreign policy. Not in general terms, I would be different, not just talk, I will pump oil and so on. This is one question. Another question is how you are going to resolve the issue of immigration, not just by deportation, but, as I said, I would also start the process of legalization. Those who have been in this country for a long time, who have already had children in this country, they are still considered illegal, and there are as many as 20 million of them. In foreign policy, it is very important not to fight with everyone, but to start looking for ways at the diplomatic level, primarily with China. It is China that today is a key link in resolving both the issue of the war in Ukraine and in the Middle East. It is China that today is the main oxygen of both Putin and Iran. We need to start with this. And Trump has a great philosophy for his business success, which it says that in any business, you will never have what you deserve. You will have exactly as much as you agree on. He has already proved this from his past. And today it can be applied, and he will definitely apply it with China. It is China that can close the very petrodollar oxygen in Russia and the end, and set conditions together, for example, with Trump in front of Putin. If you don't leave in 24 hours or in a week, let it be a week, beyond the borders of 1991, we will give Zelensky the weapons that Putin and the Kremlin will simply destroy. Quite possibly. This, by the way, Trump has this in his head. He had already spoken about it once. This is quite realistic.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the information that you told us, for joining our broadcast. And, in fact, very interesting conclusions now. What we have talked about suggest themselves. Thank you for joining us. Boris Pinkus, American politician, leader of the Republican Party, 45th District, from New York.